You have over 600 hours of combat hours. What have been some of the techniques you've used to manage high pressure situations? Because I know you've been in a lot.
Yeah, Don. So about 25% of my total fighter flying time in the U.S. Air Force has been in combat, flying the F-16. It's not all the same. What I mean by that, some of those were high pressure missions throughout, and then some of them were very routine that suddenly transitioned to high pressure moments. The key was to identify and understand that transition was occurring. Within high pressure situations, some things that I'd offer. One, confidence. We face very few things, and I think this is exportable across leadership as a whole. We face very few situations that we aren't at least somewhat prepared for. That's a product of our education, our training, and our experience. And tying what we're facing to what we have learned and done in the past is so useful and helps us with our confidence. Next, it's about confidence in your people. Just in the fighter world, we rarely go through high pressure situations alone. We fly as members of a flight of 2 or a flight of 4. So there's always a wingman to your left and often to your right who's helping you deal with that high pressure situation, only if you use them well for what they know and what they can contribute. Calm leadership helps. And what that allows others to retain their confidence and to manage the same pressure that they are also under right alongside you. Something that helps with that is reflecting on what's really at stake. Not every high pressure moment that is daunting in the moment is really hard in the big scheme of things. And so we have kind of a saying in the fighter world, no one's shooting at me right now. And so if no one's shooting it right at you right now, the situation isn't as high pressure as it might seem. All right. So it does help us in perspective. And then the way that we work as a team, right? And in high pressure situations in fighters, you're always working as a team. This is exportable to other walks of life. It's about how you communicate, okay? How you clearly communicate what's going on, clearly communicate directions. And I find as I go back and listen to my tapes, right, when leading in combat, I tend to speak more precisely. I tend to speak more slowly. And if you listen, I breathe more deeply and more slowly. And those are all ways to self-regulate in those high pressure situations. I have used that in high pressure situations on the ground as well.
Well, you hit all of the topics that I was thinking about because you talked about confidence, but you can't have confidence without competence, right? So you talked about all of the training, trust, having the wingman to your left or the wingman to your right. You have to trust each other, right? Otherwise, it can't work. And the communication that you are providing throughout has to be very precise. There cannot be any gray area in there. But the one thing that I did want to ask you about is breathing. So can you talk about a breathing technique? Because I see this as very important for managing high pressure situations.
Yeah. And so when you're flying fighters, breathing is something that you actually have to focus on. One, it's a useful feedback mechanism because you can actually hear your breathing through the headset. And so if you notice that you're breathing fast, it tells you something and that it's time to self-regulate. You also, under higher G situations, right, when you're doing sustained, hard turning in the airplane, you must manage your breathing because that's how you resist the effects of G forces. And so what that evolves into is that when you're flying fighters, how you monitor your breathing, but also how you regulate it right to the moment becomes a key factor in how you navigate difficult situations.
Can you talk about how you regulate your self-talk in order to walk the line between necessary confidence going into a job and maybe overconfidence?
There is a mantra that my community uses that I have found very helpful. And so one of the privileges I've had while serving as a fighter pilot in the Air Force was attending the U.S. Air Force Weapons School. It's the U.S. Air Force counterpart to Top Gun. What it does is it trains highly capable and experienced instructors relatively early in their career and then sends them out to the force to train the squadrons in peacetime and to lead the squadrons in war. All right. The mantra that the U.S. Air Force Weapons School uses is humble, credible, and approachable. And those are the attributes that they try to cultivate in their future weapons officers. And so that mantra has been really useful in dealing with some of the factors that you described. And so the humility part is immensely helpful because we never really know enough, right? And so as a weapons officer, it was key to acknowledge that you were always learning, you were always going to expand the boundaries of your ignorance, and that made you a fellow learner alongside your other squadron pilots. Humility. Next, credibility, and you've mentioned it some already, but when you open your mouth, right, you need to be right. When you fly the airplane, you need to fly it well. Credibility speaks volumes as you teach and as you lead. And then finally, approachability, whether it's leadership or instruction, I closely link the two of them. The degree to which you're approachable by the group that you lead or your wingman or that student, make sure that you create the best opportunity for learning and getting the best performance out of everyone. And so, again, I don't do self-talk per se. I do think and reflect, but when I come back to a mantra that's useful to managing some of the human tendencies that you described, humble, credible, and approachable has been useful for me for years.